subscribe and click the bell icon to turn on notifications.
Welcome to QuickBooks 2021. My name is Cindy. We're starting now in Module 5, and in this module we're going to talk about the accounts payable side of things. We're going to start off here in this first video talking about working with vendors. Vendors are people or businesses that you buy from. You have to buy products to sell in your business, or you have to buy a service that you provide. Let's go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks and we'll get started, and I'll show you how to start working with vendors in QuickBooks. When we talk about the accounts payable portion of QuickBooks, we're talking about this section right up here. And the first thing you'd want to do is go ahead and get your vendor list set up. You can access your vendors a couple of different ways. You can access the Vendor Center by clicking right here. You could also go to the icon bar and click on Vendors, or you can go to the menu and click on Vendors this way, and then you can click the Vendor Center. The Vendor Center looks just like the Customer Center as far as the setup. You'll notice all of your vendors are over on the left here, and they're in alphabetical order. You'll see the balance that you owe each vendor, and the last column lets you double click if you want to add an attachment related to that vendor. Notice you're only looking at the active vendors right now. If you wanted to look at all the vendors, which would include any inactive vendors, you would just choose that option. To make a vendor inactive, you just click the X to the left, and it will ask you if you'd like to make them inactive. If your vendor has a balance, it will make sure that you know that, and then you still get a chance to say yes or no whether you want to make them inactive. I'm going to go ahead and look at active vendors again. Whichever vendor you're clicked on, you're going to see the vendor information over here. This is information like their name, their address, their phone number. If you wanted to edit that information, just click this pencil and then you can edit that information and save it. You have a place to pin a note here. There's a couple of reports for vendors. And if you wanted to order 1099 forms or checks from Intuit, you could do that easily right here. Here you'll see the same tabs that you have over in the Customer Center. You've got one that says Transactions. This is showing me all of the transactions for, in this case, Cal Gas and Electric. If I want to go to one of these, I just double click and open it up. If I make any changes to this and save and close, they'll be reflected immediately back in this window. You can see at the bottom that you have an option to manage your transactions. There's several different options here. Most of these are on your home screen, and you're probably not going to be here when you want to create one of these, but you do have the option to do that. You can also view this as a report if you would like. The next tab over is your Contacts tab. If you have a particular contact at that vendor's office that you like to deal with, you can come down here to the bottom and you can choose Add New, and you'll be able to add a new contact here. Here's your To-Dos tab. If you have any to-dos related to the accounts payable side of things, you'll be able to enter those here. If I go down to the bottom, here's where you create a new to-do. And you can also come down here and launch a to-do report if you have some already set up. The next thing you see is your Notes tab. This is where you can create a new note. You would go in and put in the date and time stamp, type your note, and then you can click OK. And then that note would show up right over here. If it has a pin to the left of it, that means it's going to show up right here. The last tab you'll see is your Sent Emails tab. If you've sent any emails through QuickBooks to a vendor, and a good example would be a purchase order, then they would show up in this list as well. The next thing I want to show you is with your vendors, if you ever wanted to merge two vendors together, you would be able to do that. And this is true anywhere in QuickBooks there is a list. As long as the list doesn't have any sub-items below, you can merge them pretty easily. Let's say that this Cal Gas and Electric and Cal Oil Company are the same company. We're going to keep the Cal Gas and Electric, so that means we're going to edit the one we don't want. We'll edit Cal Oil Company. Now before I do that, what I usually do is I open up the one I do want to keep and I copy the name because we're going to have to actually paste that name over in the one we want to get rid of. I'm going to open Cal Oil, and I'm going to replace the name with Cal Gas and Electric, and then click OK. Now it tells me this name is being used. Would you like to merge them? I'm going to say yes. And now you'll see you have Cal Gas and Electric, and all the transactions have been merged. You cannot unmerge it, so be careful and make sure that's what you do want to do. Now let's talk about adding a vendor. To add a vendor, just come up here to the top and click on New Vendor. The first thing you want to do is give your vendor a name. I'm just going to say ABC Plumbing. Then it has a field for the opening balance. This would be how much money did you owe your vendor as of your start date. I don't like to use that. I like to go back and put the actual bills I owed in as of the start date, and that way I have a record to go back and look at. The next thing is the Address Info tab. You can see there are several different fields where you can put in the company name. If you wanted to put in a person's name, you could do that. I'm just going to copy and paste this here. All of these fields can represent whatever you'd like them to from this drop-down list. You would want to come in and put in your vendor's address. The next thing you want to do is go to the Payment Settings tab. If you have an account number with your vendor, you can plug it in here. If your vendor gives you specific terms, you can pick from the drop-down list. Sometimes you might want to have a different name print on a check for your vendor. A good example is when you use subcontractors, they are vendors. They may have a business, but they may ask you to print their name on the check or vice versa. You can set up a credit limit for your vendor. If you try to buy something that will exceed the credit limit, QuickBooks will pop up and let you know that, and then you can still enter that transaction. You can also set a billing rate level here if you want. If, for example, each time you use this vendor, you have a fixed hourly rate, you can plug that in, or it could be a custom rate that's going to vary depending on which of these items that you're actually purchasing. The next tab over on the left is your tax settings. This is an important tab to note because if you use subcontractors in your business, they are not employees. They have nothing to do with payroll. They're considered vendors. Your vendors should always give you a bill and you pay that bill. This is where you would enter your vendor tax ID number and check off if they're eligible for a 1099. If this is not filled out, you cannot print 1099s for your vendors. The next tab is your account settings. If you have a particular vendor that you write checks to, for example, and every time you actually put their name in, you want several of these accounts from your chart of accounts to automatically populate, you can set that up here. The last tab is your additional info tab. If you have different vendor types in your business, you may want to set that up here. You can also come over here and define your fields. If you wanted to have some new ones, you just type the name of that field and check off whether that field is available for customers, vendors, and or employees. I'm going to click OK there, and that's all you really need to tell it when you're creating a new vendor. I'm going to click OK, and now that takes me back to the vendor center. I'll just go back to the home screen. Now that you know how to set up your vendors, let's go ahead and move over into the second video, and we're going to talk about entering bills in QuickBooks. Hey there, it's Cindy. Welcome back to QuickBooks 2021. We're working through Module 5 right now, and we're talking about vendors, which is your accounts payable side of QuickBooks. QuickBooks has a feature that allows you to enter your bills. A lot of people don't enter their bills. They will actually just collect them, and when they're ready to make payments, they'll sort through and decide which ones they'd like to pay. Your accounting will be correct if you do that, but QuickBooks is designed to enter those bills so that you can run reports at any time and see who you owe, how much you owe, and different things like that. Let's go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks and I'll show you how to properly enter your bills. Entering bills in QuickBooks is easy. You're going to the Vendors section of your home screen and you're going to choose Enter Bills. The first thing you need to tell QuickBooks is this a bill I received or is it a credit from a vendor? We'll say this is a bill, and let's say this is Cal Gas and Electric. You'll see that it pre-populated the address for me and the terms. Those were set up in the vendor setup. It also brought in a memo and a line under the Expenses tab here. And the reason for that is because there is a preference that you can turn on that says, if I've used Cal Gas and Electric before on a bill, the next time I use it, pull in the information from the last time. And all I need to do is type over things like the amount due. But let's just say that you want to take out some of this information. Let's say I want to take out this whole line item. All you have to do is click anywhere in that line item, hold Control on your keyboard and hit the Delete key, and you'll delete the whole line. Let's go back up here and finish this. The next thing you have to tell QuickBooks up here is the date. Now this is the date that's actually printed on your bill. You do enter bills sometimes that you don't actually receive in the mail. For example, sometimes people enter their monthly automobile payment as a bill to remind them that it's something they have to pay. You would have a date that you'd want to set that up on. When you're looking at your bill, if it has a date that's printed, then that's the date you want to choose here. Also, the reference number is the invoice number. Remember, a bill is an invoice on the vendor side. So they have an invoice number. I'm going to go ahead and put one in, and then I'm going to put in the total amount of the bill. Here's the bill due date. Because I've got terms of net 30, the bill due date is 30 days from this date up here. If you happen to be looking at your bill and it says it's due on the 17th, then make sure that's correct. You want to make sure when you run reports that it has the accurate due date so you know when things are due. Down under the Expenses tab, if I click my mouse, I'll get a drop-down arrow. This is your chart of accounts. You want to go ahead and put this to the correct account. In this case, it would be utilities, and then this would be for gas and electric. Over here, you have your customer and job. If you are tracking job cost, you want to make sure you have the correct customer and job if it applies, and the correct class. Now let me just mention the Items tab. If you click here and click the drop down, these are your items. If you're entering a bill where you purchase some items that you'd like to put in your inventory, then you want to make sure you pick them from this list so that QuickBooks will update the inventory. You might receive a bill that has a shipping charge as well. The items would go under this tab, and then the shipping part would go under your chart of accounts here. You want to make sure these two tabs match this amount to the penny, or it will not let you save it. You've got a few options up at the top that I want to go through. Here's your find options. If you wanted to search through the bills, you could hit your next or previous. You could also use the find button here to put in some criteria and have QuickBooks search for you. You could create a new bill from here. You could save this, and you can also delete this from here if you want. Some people prefer to void transactions. You can void or delete this. You can also create a copy. If this is something that you put in frequently, you might open up the previous one and make a copy of it and then make any necessary changes you needed to. You also have an option to memorize this. We're going to go through the memorize option in a later module, but if this was a bill that happened on a regular basis, you could go ahead and memorize it, and then it would just automatically be here whenever you needed it to be. You can go through and print this. You could attach a file if it's related to this. Also, if you've got purchase orders, you can go through and select a purchase order that might apply to this bill. You could enter some time, Clear splits, that means if you have multiple line items chosen here, you can clear those. If you're trying to calculate down here and the number's not coming out correctly, you can recalculate, and you can also pay the bill from here, but chances are you're not going to be here when you're ready to pay that bill. Under the Reports tab, you do have some reports you might be interested in running. Probably the ones you'll run the most will be your unpaid bills and then your vendor balance detail. This is anything you haven't paid yet, and this is your whole history with that vendor. That's really all you need to tell it when you're creating bills. I'm going to save and close at the bottom, and now that bill has been entered into QuickBooks. Now that you know how to enter bills, you probably want to learn how to pay those bills the correct way in QuickBooks. Let's head on over to video number 3 in this module, and I'll show you how to correctly pay your bills. Welcome back to QuickBooks 2021. My name is Cindy. We're walking through Module 5 right now, where we're talking about the accounts payable side of QuickBooks. We've learned how to enter our bills. Now I want to show you how to pay your bills the correct way. Let's go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks and we'll pay some bills. When you're working in QuickBooks, you want to make sure you always follow the flow chart. If you've entered bills here, you want to follow the flow chart all the way to the end to pay your bill. What you do not want to do is go down here to the Write Checks window or to the check register and type in your payment. If you do that, it does not know there's an association between this bill here and that check you just wrote. Follow this to the end. Once you pay bills, it will dump your payment into the register for you. I'm going to click on Pay Bills. When we look at this list, you're seeing a list of all the bills that you owe something on, even if you owe a penny. You'll notice this list is set up in alphabetical order by vendor. That means all of CU Electric is together, Cal Gas and Electric is together, all the way down the list. You do have other ways to sort this list. You can actually come up here where it says sort by vendor and sort them by the due date. If you want to sort by an amount due, you can do that, but vendor's probably the best way to sort the list. You can also filter this list. If you only want to see any bills you've entered for Cal Gas and Electric, you can do that. If you want to take the filter off, make sure you go to the top of the list and choose all vendors to see everyone again. Up at the top, you can also show all the bills or look at any that are due on or before a specific date. That's really helpful if you're trying to make sure that you're paying things on time. Now let's say that we want to pay Cal Gas and Electric. We've got several bills in here for Cal. Let's go ahead and check each one of these off. And you'll notice that when you check these off, it assumes you're paying the entire amount that you've entered. If you're not, go ahead and just type over this the amount you are going to pay towards that bill. Since I'm only paying $100 towards this one, then QuickBooks will remember that I'll still owe $115.96 on that bill, and it will keep it in this list so I can pay it in the future. Down at the bottom, you'll notice that you have an option to go to bill. One of the few places in QuickBooks you can't double click to go to a transaction is here. You can't double click on this because it doesn't do anything. So if I want to go to the one I'm clicked on, I would click on Go to Bill. You'll also see an option that lets you set the discount. If you have a bill you've entered and the vendor has given you terms like 2% 10 net 30, then this is where you would set that discount. You would click on there. You would go ahead and add the amount that you're taking. And also you would have an account that you would have set up for discounts taken. And then you would be able to say done when you're finished, and it would apply that discount. If you've entered any credit memos from this vendor, you would see how many and the total that's available, and you could set those credits right here. The next thing you'll see at the bottom is the payment date. You can set that date for whichever date you like. Then QuickBooks wants to know the method. Are you paying with a check, credit card, or online bank pay? If you choose check, It really refers to anything that's deducted from the checking account. That might mean you paid it online. It might mean that you used the debit card. If you're actually going to print checks, then you probably want to leave this on to be printed, and you'll tell QuickBooks to take it out of your checking account. You could also say assign check number and leave it in the account checking, and then click over on pay selected bills. And I'm going to show you what happens. Because I said assign check number, it's asking me what would you like to put in that check number field. I could leave it blank. I could use a little code for anything that I paid online. I might put the word debit in there. It is up to me if I want to put anything at all in that field. I'll just put debit. And then just click OK when you're done. And now that bill has been paid. This is asking if you'd like to pay some more bills, or are you done? I'm going to say we're done. Now let's go look in the check register and see if that payment is there. I'm going to come over here where it says check register. I'm going to look in my checking account. Now when we look down here, you'll see that there is a bill for Cal Gas and Electric, and I paid it, and here's the payment. It's $336.18. When you're looking at the checkbook register, if you see bill payment, that means you entered a bill and you paid it the correct way. If you ever wonder why a bill that you already paid is sitting in your accounts payable waiting to be paid, it's typically because when you look down the list, you had check, meaning that you did what I told you not to do, where you went down here and wrote a check for it. So those are some things to look for if you still have outstanding accounts payable and you know they've been paid. That's how you're going to pay your bills the correct way in QuickBooks. We've got one more thing to cover in this module, and that is how to actually apply vendor credits. Let's go ahead and move over to video number 4, and I'll show you how to enter those vendor credits that you receive. Hey there, welcome back to QuickBooks 2021. We're now working in Module 5, and we're all the way down to the last video where I want to talk to you a little bit about what to do if your vendor issues you a credit. You're going to be able to enter that credit in QuickBooks and then apply it towards any bills that are outstanding. Let's go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks and I'll show you how to enter those credits. Before we enter our credit from the vendor, let's open the Pay Bills window. If you notice Cal Gas and Electric right here, we owe the vendor $115.96. The vendor has issued us a credit memo, so we're going to go ahead and enter that. Back on the home screen, you just want to use the Enter Bills icon. And if you remember, when you enter a bill, you can also tell QuickBooks right here that this happens to be a credit from the vendor. We're going to enter the name of the vendor, Cal Gas and Electric. We'll put in the date of the credit memo. If you have a reference number, you can plug that in. And then we'll put in the amount of the credit. There is a place for a memo so that you can look at this in the future and know exactly why that credit was issued. And then you can pick from your items or your expenses tab. What you typically want to do is use the same account or item from the items tab that you used when you actually made the purchase. In this case, it was utilities and it was gas and electric. But keep in mind that if it was a physical product that you purchased to begin with that you're getting a credit back for, you want to use the Items tab. I'm going to click Save and Close at the bottom. And now that credit has been entered. Now let's go back to the Pay Bills window for a moment. And you'll notice that here's the Cal Gas and Electric, the $115.96 that we still owe. When I click here, it assumes I'm going to pay it, but I'm not going to actually pay it. What I'm going to do is come down here where it says Set Credits. You can see there is one credit available for $115.96. I'm going to Set Credits. It's going to check off any bills that have an exact match. We only had one in this case. All I have to do is click Done, and now that bill has been totally paid. I'm going to click at the bottom and say Pay Selected Bills. And here you just say Done to get out of it, and now it's done. Now let's go back and check that. If I go back to pay bills, I should not see Cal Gas and Electric here anymore, and you can see it is gone because it's totally paid in full. And that's how you're going to enter a credit from a vendor and go ahead and attach that credit to the bill.
This video is part of our full QuickBooks 2021 course. Take a look at the course by clicking right over there. If you're not a subscriber, go ahead and click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. And to see more QuickBooks Pro 2020 videos, go ahead and click over there.